Wood was once hardened to the point where fire, rot and time struggled to defeat it. And the method that made it possible wasn't magic, metal or modern chemistry. It was knowledge. And for centuries it was guarded, refined and quietly lost. Castles weren't just stone walls stacked high. Hidden inside gates, drawbridges, hoardings, floors, towers and roofs was timber that had been deliberately transformed. Not ordinary wood, but wood treated to survive siege, weather, insects and flame. This wasn't accidental craftsmanship, it was a survival technology. And today, almost no one talks about it. What follows is the forgotten timber hardening method that helped castles endure for hundreds of years, why it worked, and why its logic still matters for survival and self-reliance today. Why castles trusted wood more than you think. Stone gets the glory, but wood did the real work. Castle gates were massive wooden structures reinforced with iron. Drawbridges rose and fell on wooden arms. Roofs, floors, scaffolding and defensive galleries were timber-based. Even arrow slits and fighting platforms relied on wood to function. Here's the key detail most people miss. Untreated wood would have failed quickly. Medieval Europe was wet, cold, and full of insects. Siege warfare relied heavily on fire. A poorly prepared wooden gate could doom an entire fortress. So builders didn't just cut trees and use them. They engineered the wood itself. The core idea behind timber hardening. The goal was simple. Remove weakness before it became a problem. Fresh wood is full of moisture, sugars, resins and organic compounds that attract insects and accelerate rot. Left alone, it twists, cracks and burns fast. Medieval builders understood this intuitively, even if they didn't explain it in modern scientific terms. Their solution combined controlled drying, chemical transformation and surface sealing. Each step made the timber tougher, more stable and far more resistant to damage. This wasn't a single universal recipe. It varied by region, climate and available resources, but the principles were remarkably consistent across Europe and parts of Asia. Seasoning that took years, not weeks. The first step was slow seasoning. Trees were often felled in winter when sap levels were lowest. This alone reduced internal moisture and insect attraction. Logs weren't rushed into construction. They were stacked, raised off the ground and exposed to moving air for years. In some cases, oak beams used in castles were seasoned for a decade or more. This mattered because slow drying changes the internal structure of wood. Cell walls collapse gradually instead of tearing apart. The result is denser, harder timber that resists warping and splitting. Modern lumber kilns trade speed for strength. Medieval builders chose patience, smoke, heat and controlled charring. Now we reach the part that feels almost secretive. Timber was often smoke-treated or lightly charred. Not burned, but, really transformed. Exposing wood to prolonged smoke drives out remaining moisture and deposits phenols and other compounds that repel insects and fungi. This is actually similar to food smoking, but it's done over weeks or even months. Some beams were stored above hearths or in smokehouses specifically for this purpose. Light surface charring went even further. It closed surface pores, hardened the exterior, and, well, dramatically improved fire resistance. Charred wood doesn't ignite easily. It sort of insulates itself. This technique is still used in traditional Japanese construction, and, well, archaeological evidence shows similar practices in medieval Europe, especially for gates, palisades, and exterior beams. Here's where practicality meets ingenuity. After seasoning and smoke treatment, timber was often soaked or brushed with oils, animal fats, pine resin, or tar. Linseed oil was common in some regions. In others, builders used rendered animal fat mixed with ash or lime. These substances penetrated the wood, displacing water and sealing internal fibres. The effect was honestly profound. Water resistance increased, insects lost interest, flames struggled to take hold. Tar-treated timbers, especially in northern Europe, became legendary for their durability. Some survived centuries in damp conditions that would destroy untreated wood in just a few decades. This wasn't decoration. It was survival engineering. Another overlooked detail is alkalinity. Wood treated with ash lime wash or alkaline slurries became, well, pretty hostile to mold, bacteria, and insects. These treatments actually altered the surface chemistry, creating an environment where decay simply couldn't thrive. Castle builders used this on beams embedded in stone, on floor joists, and in areas prone to moisture build-up. Even today, preserved medieval timbers often show traces of these lime-based coatings. The builders didn't know the word pH, they just knew results. Why fire didn't win as easily as you might think. Siege warfare absolutely loved fire. Flaming arrows, pitch, burning carts rammed against gates. Yet, many castle gates didn't burn the way attackers expected. Hardened timber, well, it chars instead of igniting outright. That char layer actually slows down heat penetration, and oil-treated wood resists rapid flame spread. Thick oak beams, seasoned and smoke-treated, could honestly withstand prolonged heat long enough for defenders to respond. Fire wasn't useless, of course, but it wasn't the instant win people often imagine. This is why, more often than not, attackers turn to starvation, undermining, or even betrayal instead. The knowledge behind these defences was practical, not written down. Here's the twist. Much of this wisdom was passed on orally, through guilds from master to apprentice. It lived in habits, not manuals. When castles became obsolete, well, the knowledge faded away. Industrial lumber, you see, prioritized speed and uniformity. The old methods were slow, labour-intensive, and honestly just incompatible with mass production. By the early 20th century, much of this wisdom was gone, surviving only in fragments among shipbuilders, rural craftsmen, and archaeologists who were studying preserved structures. What does this mean for modern survival skills? This isn't just history, It's a lesson. Hardening wood without modern chemicals is possible. Seasoning patiently, using smoke, applying natural oils and, understanding how moisture and insects actually work. All of these are still within reach. For anyone interested in off-grid living, long-term shelters, or, durable hand-built structures, this knowledge is gold. It's sustainable, repairable, repeatable. The past didn't rely on convenience. It relied on, understanding materials deeply. That mindset is what legacy survival is really about. Why this method still matters is pretty simple, honestly. The lost timber hardening method wasn't a single trick. It was a system. One built on observation, patience, and respect for materials. Castles weren't indestructible, but their wood was far smarter than we give it credit for. When you see a medieval gate still standing after 600 years, you're not looking at luck. You're looking at knowledge that outlived its makers. And once you understand that, you start seeing history differently. If you value forgotten skills, real-world survival wisdom, and the kind of knowledge that doesn't come from a factory, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Legacy of Survival, like the video if this opened your eyes, and share it with someone who appreciates how the past solved problems we're still facing today. More lost methods are waiting, and this is only the beginning.